Daniel Carter, 35, had spent most of his life inside a small workshop on the outskirts of Dallas. He wasn't a man of riches or reputation, but one of grit, patience, and steady hands that had breathed life back into hundreds of broken engines. Each day was the same. Cars coming in, cars going out, and Daniel working late into the night with grease on his face and determination in his eyes. He never asked for much, just enough to keep the lights on and provide for himself. Yet fate had a way of testing even the most humble hearts. It was a humid summer evening when Daniel locked up the garage. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the fading sun sinking into the horizon. The streets were quiet, but from the nearby park came the sound of laughter and children playing. Daniel smiled faintly, remembering his own younger days. Suddenly, a loud screech shattered the calm. A car, small and silver, was moving erratically down the street. Daniel froze when he saw through the windshield a young girl, no more than 12, clinging to the wheel with sheer panic in her eyes. The child's screams pierced the air. "Help!" she cried, her small hands gripping the steering wheel as the vehicle swerved dangerously toward the sidewalk. Without a second thought, Daniel dropped his toolbox and ran with everything he had. Years of instinct kicked in. He gauged the car's speed, the angle, and the open ditch just ahead. With a swift move, he yanked open the driver's door, braced himself, and forced the wheel toward safety. The car jolted violently but skidded into the ditch, stopping just inches away from a collision that could have ended in tragedy. Heart pounding, Daniel pulled the trembling girl out of the seat. She clung to him, sobbing into his shirt. Her name, he learned between gasps, was Lily, a 12-year-old who had wandered into her family's car, not realizing the brakes were faulty. Daniel's hands shook as he checked her over, making sure she was unharmed. Relief washed over him when he realized she had no injuries, only fear. Around them, a few onlookers had gathered, whispering about what had just happened. To them, Daniel was a hero. To Lily, he was the man who had given her life back in those few seconds. But not everyone saw it that way. The CEO of the garage, where Daniel worked, stormed onto the scene, having been called by a witness. Instead of praising him, the man sneered. "You had no right to interfere," he barked, more concerned about potential lawsuits than the child's life. Daniel was too stunned to argue. He had just saved a girl. Yet the man who signed his paychecks looked at him as if he were the problem. Later that night, Daniel received a cold email. He was terminated, effective immediately. The message was blunt. His actions were unprofessional and a liability. Daniel sat alone in his dimly lit workshop, the words echoing in his head. He had nothing now, no job, no stability, only the faint memory of Lily's tearful hug and the way she had whispered "thank you" into his chest. He didn't know it yet, but that moment had been more powerful than any paycheck. Somewhere, across the city, Lily was telling her mother everything, and Olivia, a woman of immense wealth and influence, was listening with tears in her eyes. For Daniel, the story was only just beginning. The next morning, Daniel was still wrestling with the bitterness of losing his job. He sat at his small wooden table, sipping black coffee that had long gone cold, wondering how long he could keep the workshop open with no steady income. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of polished tires rolling across the gravel outside. Looking out the window, his eyes widened at the sight of a sleek black limousine parked in front of his humble shop. Daniel's chest tightened with unease. He wasn't accustomed to visitors like this, especially not ones who stepped out with such quiet authority. The back door of the limo opened, and Lily leaped out, her bright smile cutting through the heavy silence of the morning. She rushed toward Daniel, arms open wide, hugging him before he could say a word. "Mom, this is him!" she exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. Daniel's gaze shifted, and there she was. Olivia Montgomery, 40, one of the most influential businesswomen in Texas. Her elegant dress and commanding presence contrasted sharply with the rough, oil-stained floor of his shop. For a moment, Daniel felt like a small speck in her world of power and wealth. Olivia's eyes softened as she looked at Daniel. For years she had been called ruthless, a woman who measured everything in numbers and returns. But standing in front of this man who had risked everything to save her daughter, her voice trembled with gratitude. "I can buy Lily anything, schools, cars, even futures, but what you gave her, Mr. Carter, no wealth can replace. You gave her freedom." Her words struck Daniel harder than he expected. He shifted uncomfortably, wiping his grease-stained hands on a rag, humbled by the sincerity shining in her eyes. Lily tugged on Daniel's sleeve, her childish innocence breaking the moment's tension. "Mom said you lost your job because of me," she whispered, her big eyes brimming with guilt. Daniel knelt, meeting her gaze, and smiled faintly. "You don't need to worry about that," he said softly. "Your life means more than any job, Lily." Olivia watched the exchange with her throat tight. She had sat in countless boardrooms, signed million-dollar contracts, but never had she felt so moved as she did in that small, dusty garage with her daughter and this humble mechanic. Then Olivia did something that would change Daniel's life forever. She walked slowly across the shop, her heels clicking against the concrete, and handed him a set of keys. Daniel looked down, confused. "What's this?" he asked, her lips curved into a gentle smile. "Your own shop," she replied. "Consider it a gift, not out of charity, but out of respect. You saved my daughter. And men like you, Daniel, deserve the chance to keep doing what you love without someone above you holding you down." Daniel stood frozen, the weight of her words crashing into him harder than any hardship he had faced before. For the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to breathe freely. He glanced at Lily, who was beaming up at him, and then at Olivia, whose eyes shimmered with tears she tried to hide. He realized this wasn't just about a job or a building, it was about trust, dignity, and a second chance at life. As the limousine pulled away, leaving him with the keys in his hand, Daniel, you felt something shift deep within. Yesterday he was a poor mechanic. Today he was a man whose kindness had reshaped his destiny forever.